Hi, Rod. Hope you're doing well. And again, sorry for the delay on this critique, but great to see it here and glad to be able to help you with it. Looks fantastic. You've done a great job developing the shading and really just moving this portrait along. As a matter of fact, I have the one from before. I believe this is the one from before. So you've really done well in adding more depth and dialing in the likeness a little bit more, especially with the eyes. So very well done. Let's go ahead though and bring this up to another level of completion, and I'll just kind of show you my game plan before I even get into the nuts and bolts of it. So biggest thing I see is that the forehead is a little too light, and you've kind of left that area open, I'm sure, just so maybe it didn't get too heavy with glazes. But that's the thing that really jumps out is the values on the forehead now are too light. So that's a good problem though, because that's easily resolved rather than the converse of having to lighten it up when it's too dark. So we can just darken that, and then maybe some other areas like the nasolabial folds need to get darker and a few other things. So let's see what we can get done here, and I'm going to just zoom in, and let's go for it. Okay, so we're going to start by taking some, I would say, some pyro orange, and maybe just a little bit of raw sienna and titanium white. So just so it's got a bit of opacity to kind of blend in everything else. And let's go ahead and grab a larger brush. Yeah, something about like this. And then we're going to go with about 10% opacity. Let's give this a shot and see what happens. So we're just going to darken that a little bit. Okay, darken a little bit right here. And a little bit right there. So we're using kind of a larger approach at this point. But I can foresee coming back with some highlights to maybe restore a few things. But again, just that idea of darkening it. Let's darken that area too, right above the nose bridge. Okay, and now after that would dry, you could switch to a smaller brush and just kind of get in a couple of these nuances we're seeing with the wrinkles there. Okay, a little bit of a nuance there. There we go. And now let's go ahead and switch. We're not done with this area, but let's go ahead and switch into something else. I think the area around the eyebrows and the eyes need to be darkened a little bit. So let's go ahead and take some raw umber dark, and we put a little bit of burnt sienna and alizarin crimson. And we're just going to darken the underside of the eyebrow area. Darken under here a little bit. And then even, the sclera too can get a bit darker. Now you can come back in and restore some of the highlights, but it's kind of nice just to darken it a bit. And then with that, let's take a smaller brush and you get a little more opaque, so you could just mix more of those pigments into the color and get a nice shadow under the nose. So go ahead and do that. A little shadow here above the lip. This shadow here, the area by the jawline, a little bit dark. Or sorry, it's a little too warm in color. It needs to get a little bit less warm. So you want to tone that down with this kind of raw umber dark color. Now that area there is nice and dark. That would be the area under the chin, going into the platysmal banding in that area. But we could darken this whole thing just a bit, but let's warm up the color a bit, and we'll add a little more like alizarin crimson to it and burnt sienna. We're going to take a brush about this size, and we're going to just darken the left-hand side a little bit, and just kind of darken that whole side of the face. Now let's add maybe a bit of pyrrole orange to it. Some matte medium, lighten that up a bit more. Okay, and let's go ahead and add just a bit of that glaze right there by the mustache area. Okay, I'm going to zoom out just a bit, and want to take a look at this zoomed out from a distance. Okay, so this area here needs to be darkened just a bit, and for that, let's go ahead and, if you remember that original color we had for the forehead, you could use some of that and just kind of darken this area a bit. Add a little bit of this to the chin, just kind of round off that chin, get a little bit of a ball kind of shape, but very faint. A little shadow under the lip region right there. Now with this color, you know, have a little bit more titanium white, maybe a bit more naphthyl red in it. And so with that, we're going to just introduce a bit more pink into the flesh tones. Let's add a little more titanium white, maybe some naphthyl red. And we're just going to introduce this color into the flesh tones, just so it's got a little more red and not quite so much of a yellowish goldenrod kind of color, or like raw sienna. That glaze I just put down was too much. Let's just take that off there. Okay. Now we might need to mix in a little more burnt sienna, and then naphthyl red, maybe even a bit of alizarin crimson, and just tone it down. Get somewhat of a shadow color here. Glaze in the side area of the jaw just a bit. And let's go ahead and add some raw umber dark to the mix. Maybe just a bit of raw sienna. And we're just going to tone down, or actually darken, that jawline a bit on the right side. So we do have a little bit of titanium white present in this mix, and could add just a bit more, and we could just kind of tone down the area here, the shading below the chin. Darken that a bit more. This area a bit more too. This area. Okay, now let's go in and do a little bit of close-up work on the eyes. And what I'm seeing is that we need a little more differentiation on the interior of the sclera on the left-hand side of the eye. We'll want to take like a raw umber dark with maybe just a little bit of burnt sienna and alizarin crimson, and then get a small round brush, and you're going to want to just kind of fill this in. Just make sure maybe we need the color to be a little bit warmer. Okay, so we're just filling it in right here. As a matter of fact, this could get a little bit darker. Let's add some more raw umber dark and alizarin crimson. Just kind of extend, see the thickness of the eyelid fold? That just needs to get a bit thicker there. But then where you add this very dark color, It should be like very close to black. Then you want to have some shading around it. So that'll have to dry. You come back in with adding alizarin crimson, pyro orange to that mix, or just finding something on your palette where it's warmer in tone. You can see that. See where it's a little bit warmer in color. Now let's get a little bit of a wider brush or use more pressure on your brush to get the bristles to come out further. And you get that glaze kind of coming up around that shadow. And then now you need to extend the shadow out into the rest of it. And the color needs to be a little cooler. So we got to add some raw umber dark again to cool it down a bit. We extend the shadow out of that corner and blend it into the concentric eyelid fold. Sclera can get a little darker too. Can get darker right there. So we're going to have kind of a raw umber dark glaze. Now let's just move the eye over, and we're going to add this glaze as well right up here. Darken that. Going to darken the sclera a little bit there. Just a bit on the edge. Okay, so kind of leave this area in the middle alone to give it some more depth. And let's go back to that warmer color, if you remember that, where you had a little bit of a reddish orangish tint. We're going to get that around this portion here. But we do need to, get the very, very dark color that's like just about black. Maybe with a little bit of a warmer tint. It's got just a little alizarin crimson in it. And smaller brush. And you're going to really darken this corner right here. Make sure you got that full width there. You could probably extend this portion up here a bit higher from what I'm seeing. That should be basically just about black right there. It just gives it a little more intensity. You could probably do it on the other eye too, just extend that up. Just give it a slight bit more curve on that upper eyelid fold crease. There is an additional wrinkle there, if you can see that, right up alongside the edge of the sclera and under that fold. You don't want to use black for that. You want to use more of a darker brown. So go back to something on your palette that's got one of those reddish tints in it, and you can put that little wrinkle in there. You might want to go into a slightly lighter color and bring that all the way down to the bottom. So you start with a darker one, lighter, a little warmer colors. It gets closer to the tear duct. Okay, so we add a little more of lighter and a little more reddish tint. Pyro orange, burnt sienna would work well for that. Right here, you can get a little bit of shading on the edge of the eyelid. You could put in a couple of flecks of color for some eyelashes, right? Just to suggest those in there at this point. All right, that was too much. You don't want it to look contrived. And then, some darker shadows for the eyebrows. So again, like raw umber dark, and maybe even you need a little bit of ultramarine blue to get it as dark as it should go. You might have needed it in here with the eyes as well. I guess I forgot to mention that, but yeah, you might have to add a little bit of ultramarine blue to get the darkest values to really pop. But you can warm them up a bit. Slightly larger brush. All right, so this is we're getting that, and there's a little bit of shading. You can go into a warmer color and turn the form right there on that upper eyelid fold crease. All right, and right here. Yeah, so all this makes a difference around the mouth. You could do a little shading there, but let's let's get the nasolabial folds darkened, and you can use the same color here that you were using for the eye, and slightly larger brush. We'll start by getting a crease in on the lower half, like that. Upper half, get a little warmer in tone, so a little pyro orange, burnt sienna, a little bit warmer tone here. And then again, just a bit darker at the bottom. And that's gonna, again, help to turn the form there. You can see on this crease by the eyelid, we need to get just a little more shading there. Let's pop that in. Just let that shadow of that fold meet the concentric eyelid fold, and then it can kind of flow into the actual eyebrow area as well. Right here around the wing of the nose, you get a little additional shading that can blend into the eyeglasses area, but you've got to keep the color warm enough. So, you know, if it doesn't look right, doesn't match your reference photo, just wipe it off. Just wipe it off with your finger or a wet rag, whatever you have handy, and just try again. Because you want to try to match that warmth properly. Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And yeah, you know, lastly, let's do this. Let's just brighten up those reflections on the eyes, because I think they got darkened as you put some glazes over the whole area. So now you can kind of, whoops, you can kind of restore that luminosity. All right, so let's do that. Let's take a small brush. And let's grab basically some titanium white, maybe with just a bit of Indian yellow added, so kind of a warm white. And we'll go ahead and pop in a little highlight. Let's take that up to about 50%. We'll kind of separate it a little bit because there's two reflections there. All right, so we add a little highlight here, little highlight there. Just place it on the highlights you already have with a small round brush. And then when you back out of it, it should look really nice. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's really getting there. Let's do a little bit of shading on the hair. And it might be as much time as I have right now. So we'll take Romber Dark Ultramarine Blue, a bit of alizarin crimson, get a nice gray. Maybe even add just a bit of titanium white to help it to blend better at this stage, because you can go kind of semi-opaque. We'll take it down to about 15 to 20% to start with. A little bit of a bigger brush. And we'll just kind of block that in. Let's add just a little more titanium white to the mix. Yeah, so we're going to add some shading here on the bottom part of the hair, the middle, on the top. Oh yeah, and I can see on the top the color has a little more blue present, so let's do that. Make this, add a little bit of ultramarine blue and maybe even some phthalo blue to the mix, just to get that tint in there. Probably catching some of the sky color, I'm guessing, on that portion. Okay, get a little more shading in here. More shading. And we'll go just a bit darker. Not quite so blue. Let's add a little raw umber dark and alizarin crimson just to kind of desaturate the blue out of it a bit. Okay, I see we do need more blue in this part over here. So let's add that right up there. There we go. I'll wipe that off. That was a little much. Okay, and let's go back to that kind of raw umber dark color and the pyrrole orange burnt sienna. Let's go back to that and just work on the nasolabial folds a bit more. I can see that as I zoomed out. I need to make it just a bit darker. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's actually go into a slightly warmer part of this color and larger brush. Just going to darken this a bit right there. Okay, let's kind of smooth that in, darken that area a bit more. All right, that's good. And then let's get a little bit of shading on the nose. With this, we'll have to add just a bit of raw umber dark, so it's not quite so rich in tone. Just darken that bottom portion of the nose a little bit, like that. A little bit on this side, on the left. Let's darken the hair a little bit too while we're there. Okay. So this is good. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. See what we have. All right, let's see what we've got here. Yeah, so you can see the difference we've made with the before and after. Not maybe as quite as dramatic as some of the earlier renditions for what we did today, but you know, some nice subtle nuances. So basically, we're filling in the gaps and some of these missing values on the forehead, getting the highlights a bit more subdued, getting some nuances developed in the eyebrows and eyes, nasolabial fold, other values all over the face, the hair, and a little bit on the neck. So that's what we accomplished today. And you can see how then that just brings it a little bit closer to completion. So little by little, it's getting there. And again, Rod, you're doing a great job. And, you know, I'd encourage you, as long as you have interest on this, you know, to push it as far as you can in terms of realism and really capturing your likeness. And just that sense of there-ness, you know. So I would really encourage you to take it as far as you can. But at the end of the day, I'll leave that up to you. And if you feel like at any point you're finished with it, then go ahead and sign off on it with my blessing, and I'll just congratulate you. But yeah, you're doing a great job in this. So keep up the good work. And after your changes, your additions, I should say, on this, we can just take it even further. So I look forward to helping you with that. Anyway, let me ask a blessing on your portrait, and I'll let you get back to your easel. Father, I ask a blessing here on Rod's painting. Help him to make the additions that I've demonstrated here in the video that would be helpful for him. Guide him with every brush stroke, and thank you for the talent you've given him, Lord. And I just pray you continue to bless his painting, and that this would be his best portrait ever. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Rod, let me know how it helps. You can download the still shot of this, your portrait with the overlay we did on Photoshop, and use that as a reference. And yeah, hope this is helpful for you. Let me know how it helps. Look forward to seeing your work on this. Have a great weekend. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.